Anyway, it's my intent to get through future interests. Let's go. Fee simple estates never end. Fee simple absolute can last forever. Descends automatically to the heirs on death of the current possessor. Can be alienated, sold, given away, devised in will. Fee simple defeasible can last forever. Can also be ended by the happening of a certain event in the future. Fee simple determinable, created by durational language, so long as, while, until, during, and upon stated event. That creates a fee simple determinable. Fee simple subject to subsequent condition, but if, upon, condition that, these are words that create that. Fee simple subject to condition subsequent. The words of grant are, but if, upon, condition that, provided that. Created by language, creating a condition that subjects the present possessor to the grantor's right of entry, which must be exercised. It also must be written in. It doesn't just default. You need to write, wait, no, I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not wrong. I don't know. It needs to be exercised. You know that. Fee simple subject to executory limitation, and I don't actually have any notes in this outline about executory limitation. Fee tail estate may end when direct line of descendants runs out. Entailed is another way to refer to that. It's not alienable, and it involves an estate that can last until the grantee's direct line of descendants runs out. Under separate doctrine of primogeniture, land went to the eldest male line. Daughters could not take if there were any sons. Female descendants, if there were no sons, the daughters took as a group. Okay, so the daughters could not take if there were any sons, and the female descendants would take as a group if there were no sons. Now, the way that a fee tail was granted is with words reading to A and their heirs males to the body, heirs male to his body. Primogeniture was abolished in both England and U.S. Life estate may end when possessor dies. Today it is assumed that the largest estate is granted. Example for life must be used to signify if it is meant to be limited to the grantee's life. Earliest recognized type of estate. Under feudal law, all estates were for life, only so overlord could control who got the next estate. Under feudal law, all estates were for life, only, wait, I just read that. Legal as opposed to equitable life estates, little used today. Most often used in trusts. Trustee holds legal title for beneficiaries and can be for the life with further transfer to remainder. Trust instrument tends to give greater discretion and observes the fiduciary rule. Your cases, not actually like written here, but not actually briefed, is White versus Brown, Baker versus Whedon. Leasehold estates, defeasible estates. Leasehold we'll get to later. Defeasible estates, the cases on point are also not briefed. Mahrenholz versus County Board of School Trustees, Mountain Brow Lodge, number 82, Independent Order of Odd Fellows versus Toscano, and Inc. versus City of Canton. How badly do I want to brief these cases? Pretty bad. Chapter 4. Easy. I admittedly want to brief these cases pretty badly. I mean, it's not in the torts binder. And I believe this is a criminal binder. And Google us class notes. Contracts. Law. Wills and trusts. Where's the property? Evidence, civil contracts, corporations, UCC, professional responsibility, community property. Oh, I don't have it. You've got to be kidding me. Sometimes if I outline the course, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I don't really need the binder anymore, but that's depressing. A way to brief cases, though, is to look them up in Westlaw, which you can pull up on my computer if it wants to wake up. Or on my work phone. Yeah, I want to brief the case as, it's not just about passing the bar. Yeah, I want to work in a law firm for experience. It's not just about memorization. It's not just about making money. It's not just about California. All right. Let's look up White v. Brown. That's probably going to be one of the hardest cases to find since it's so general. But it has to do with the life estate. So let's see if it, maybe I can search the word life estate too. Or just look for the oldest case. White versus Brown, life estate. I see Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Shawnee County. Lewis versus Brown, Cushion Kelly, Henry Coopers. They might all be citing this case. So this is San Francisco. Morphew versus San Francisco, SRR, Estate of Morse. Henry Smithy's estate. Lewis versus Folney. Estate of Mullenhole. Henry White's estate. That's from 1952. It's about Laguna. Bacon's versus Smith. Green versus Brown. Henry Smith's estate. 1961, California. Gosh. Not finding this. Okay, we're going to need a better Easier case to find. Baker versus Whedon. Okay, this one I think I acting like I remember. But it does strike me as as potentially a California case about Baker versus Whedon. All right, well, we're not going to find any cases on life estate right now to brief. But we did find that Marinholz case. So let's give the synopsis. According to Westlaw, purchasers brought quiet title action against school district. The circuit court, this is in Illinois, Lawrence County dismissed purchasers' Third Amendment complaint, and they appealed. The appellate court, Jones, held that since 1941, deed conveyed to school district a defeasible fee simple estate with a future interest remaining in the grantors of a possibility of reverter or right of reentry for a condition broken if land ceased to be used for school purposes only. Neither future interest could be transferred by will or by inter vivos conveyance, and since the land in question was being used for school purposes when third parties in 1959 conveyed their purported interest in the school property to plaintiffs did not acquire any interest in the land from third-party vendors through that conveyance, but to language and grant of land to school district, that land would be used for school purposes only, otherwise to revert to grantors demonstrated grantors intent to create a fee simple determinable followed by a possibility of reverter, not a fee simple subject to conditions subsequent. And thus the trial court erred in dismissing amendment complaint to quiet title to granted land, which school district ceased using for school purposes in 1973, and which grantor's error conveyed to the plaintiff in 1977. That's how that was disposed of. It went back to the grantor by reverter, and the grantor deeded it over to the plaintiffs who brought the action. Shall we read another? Mountain Brow Law. And so these are defeasible fees. Hey Siri, what is the definition of defeasible? Estates.
Defeasible means estates. Open in principle to revision, valid objection, forfeiture, or annulment.
Well, that makes sense. Open in principle to revision, valid objection, forfeiture, or annulment. So that's the difference between your fee simple estate, fee simple determinable. I'm sorry, fee simple defeasible. Fee simple estates are divided into probably lots of things, but we're going to just say two for now. Fee simple absolute, fee simple defeasible. Defeasible is what's broken into the fee simple determinable, and the fee simple subject to condition subsequent, and the fee simple subject to executory limitation. So all three of those are fee simple defeasible. So this is another California case, Mountain Brow Lodge, number 82, independent order versus the independent order of Oddfellows versus Toscano. This is an action by a nonprofit corporate grantee to quiet title to interest in land arising from certain conditions contained in a gift deed. The Superior Court Merced Merced County, Gregory Mushart Justice rendered judgment in favor of defendants and plaintiff appealed. The Court of Appeal Gargano held inter alia that habendum clause restricting property for the use and benefit of the grantee, construed as a whole and in light of surrounding circumstances, created a fee subject to conditions subsequent with title to revert to grantors, their successors, or assigns if land ceased to be used for lodge, fraternal, and similar purposes for which nonprofit corporate grantee was formed. Judgment affirmed with directions. Okay, so the reverter wins again. The reverter prevails. Inc. versus City of Canton? I don't think so. We don't have time for this. Like 1,000 million cases. We're going to Chapter 5, Future Interest. Future interest in the grantor. Here's your reversion. He keeps winning in court. Interest remaining in the grantor. Residue when she does not convey all of the estate that she owns. Reversion arises after a fee simple and a fee tail by operation of law. Always is vested. Often is implied in the grant if there is no other disposition. And reversions can be alienable / devised by will outside but not right of entry that's traditionally available to her. Interesting how I outlined everything that I need to, that the Barbary outline tells me I need to know for the bar. Like, to a T. Possibility of reverter. Interest that follows a fee simple determinable. For example, if the property is used contrary to the grant, it reverts to the grantor automatically. Often is implied in the grant, although it can be explicit. Reversions can be alienable, devised by will, outside, but not right of entry that's traditional available to heir. So we've got the reversion and the possibility of reverter. Somehow, these are two different sections in my outline, even though I always thought they were interchangeable. So we're talking about interest remaining in the grantor, residue when she does not convey all of the estate that she owns. That's a reversion. The possibility of reverter is the interest that follows the fee simple determinable. If the property is used contrary to the grant, it reverts to the grantor automatically. Meaning, not by the right of entry. Because the right of entry requires an act on the grantor to walk in and, like, slap people. Interest that follows a fee simple, subject to conditions subsequent. That's your right of entry. Right of entry is not automatic. It must be exercised. Future interest in the transferee must be capable of becoming promissory immediately on expiration of the previous estate. That's your future interest in the transferee. Must be capable of becoming promissory immediately on expiration of the previous estate. What is that? Springing, not shifting. Springing interest. If there is any gap between the term of previous estate and possession, then the grant is not a remainder. I didn't even know we were talking about remainders yet, but here's the definition. A future interest in the transferee can only follow a fee tail, a life estate, or a term of years. We knew that about a remainder. So we're actually talking about remainders right now. Here's the definition according to me. Future interest created in transferee that is capable of taking in present possession and enjoyment, i.e. capable of becoming a present interest upon the natural termination of the preceding estates in the same disposition. Exact same words as Barbary. I already had it. 1 must be created in the instrument creating the intermediate possessory estate. 2, now that fee tails are abolished, it can be said that a remainder always follows a life estate, but also sometimes a term of years. Types. Here's the types of remainders. I sure hope this makes more sense than Barbary. 1, indefeasibly vested remainder can be created in and held only by an ascertained person or persons in being, and not subject to any condition precedent other than the terms of previous estate, and will come about automatically upon the natural termination of the preceding estates in the same disposition. That's your indefeasibly vested remainder. Subject number 2, the next type of remainder is that which is subject to complete divestment - executory limitation. Later event may take away the estate from the grantee. To A for life, then to B, but if B does not survive A, to C. I believe B's interest is a remainder subject to complete divestment. Might not be how that's referred to, but I think that's most of it. Now, another type of remainder is that which is subject to partial divestment rather than complete divestment / executory limitation. So, when there's a partial divestment, more commonly known as subject to open, which is also a partial divestment, i.e., a class gift that may allow new members to enter the class and share in the disposition or in the gift, in the grant. Contingent is the 4th type of remainder. This is a remainder that is not vested because 1, it is not given to ascertained or ascertainable person, or 2, is subject to unfulfilled condition precedent, or 3, alternative contingent remainders. That probably isn't an element. That's probably just another. It's a different kind of a contingent remainder. Is the alternate contingent remainder. A grant may have 2 alternate contingent remainders. Case Folsom versus Rowell. This case involved an instrument language vesting estate in the parties that care for A.F. but was not descendable. The rule of law, to distinguish between vested remainders and contingent remainders, a court must determine whether at the time the instrument takes effect, there is a person who in his own right or as part of his estate would take all of this property if the life estate ended now. If there is such a person, then the remainder is vested, subject to partial or complete defeasance. If no such person is identified, then the remainder is subject to a condition precedent and is a contingent remainder. For example, those not ascertained from Swanson versus Swanson. Executory interests. So this is a whole new type of future interest in the trust transferee, which makes sense. As opposed to what I have it as, which is a contingent remainder. So I don't know, it could be either. But I think it's the first. I think it's a different type of a future interest in the transferee. Executory interest given to a third party that follows a previously vested interest in a fee simple defeasible subject to executive limitation. And there you have your shifting interest and your springing interest defined. Shifting interests are interests in a third party that shift from the grantee of the same instrument. Springing interests are interests in a third party that spring from the grantor. So I got them mixed up when I was discussing them before. Which one has gaps? I would say, the way that this is written, that the springing interest has gaps because it has to go to the grantor first from the grantee, whereas the shifting interest goes from the grantee to the third party based on the same instrument. The trust. Broadway National Bank versus Adams. Trust income was withheld from beneficiaries. Creditors by design per rule, man cannot attach to a grant or transfer of property otherwise absolute the condition that it shall not be alienated, such condition being repugnant to the nature of the estate granted. That is your precedent case. John C. Gray, Restraints on the Alienation of Property. Justice wrote a paper against this treatment for morality reasons. Many decades later, trust income became susceptible to beneficiaries' creditors. So Justice John Gray, Honorable Justice John Gray, was very much against spendthrift trusts. Abolition for trusts has to do with U.S. tax law on inheritances. It's possession to delay taxes for generations if there is a trust. I mean, that's why they're set up. But the rule against perpetuity still invalidates interests that vest too remotely. So taxes would still be due after about 2 generations under the rule against perpetuities. Several states have enacted laws allowing perpetual trusts. Abolish rule against perpetuities for trusts where trustee has the power to sell or otherwise alienate trust assets. Straight abolition or opt-out provision. So these are all pertaining to the perpetual trust, because they're all within where I just said that several states have enacted laws allowing perpetual trust. So these are probably examples, although I'm not doing a good job of relating them back to perpetual trust. But straight abolition or opt-out provision law applies to all trusts set up under that state's laws with trustee in that state, regardless where assets located or where trustor and beneficiaries live. SC Supreme Court case last year set forth what state is a citizen for diversity purposes. Maybe that means South Carolina, I don't know. Trust lives where trustee lives because trustee has legal title. Right. So there's a case on point here. Like if your trust is written in Delaware for a person who resides in Florida, they're going to apply Florida law and not Delaware where it was written, but Florida where the trustee lives. Why? Because the trustee has legal title. So as I say that, I'm pretty sure the settler probably lived in Florida and the trust was probably written in Delaware and managed by the trustee in Delaware, like Wilmington Trust. And therefore, why would they arrive at using Florida law rather than Delaware? I don't know. Maybe I don't remember that case as well as I thought I did, but I thought they landed on Florida law. That one was a special outcome. Probably that she she changed her trust while she was in Florida, I think. Beneficiary has equitable title. Self-deal - imprudent means surcharging a trustee reasonable fees by state legislation. Marketability doctrines is the next section after this trust. Oh my god. All right, we got this. Destruction of contingent remainders, rule in Shelley's case, the doctrine of worthier title. I didn't even write anything here. Hey Siri, what is the rule in Shelley's case?
Okay. I found this on the web for what is the rule in Shelley's case. Check it out.
Wikipedia says, hey Siri, what is the rule in Shelley's case?
I found fa results in Mandarin Chinese for rule.
Hey Siri, what is the rule in Shelley's case?
I found this on the web.
We're going to go to Wex Legal. Law Cornell, the rule of law. That's nice. How nice was that? Really nice. Provides that a conveyance which attempts to give a person a life estate with a remainder to that person's heirs will instead give both a life estate and a remainder to that person. I think they mean reversion, but they write this in like American speech. Hey Siri, what's the rule of worthier title? It's a doctrine.
I found this on the web.
Doctrine of worthier title in real estate law, which creates a presumption that when a grantor conveys a future interest to their own heirs, the grantor actually intended to keep the interest in themselves. This is a rule of construction. Might not always have that effect. I don't know. What's wrap? No interest in a grantee is good unless it must vest in interest, if at all, not later than 21 years, and periods of gestation after some life and being at the creation of the interest. That comes our friend Honorable Justice John C. Gray again. The rule against perpetuities, wrap, again, is also defined in another way. A future interest is void the moment it is created if 1, it is in a grantee, and 2, it is either A, contingent, or B, subject to open, and it might exist and still be contingent or subject to open longer than 21 years after the death of the last person alive at the time of the conveyance. Life and being. Someone alive, this defines part of the definition, because like there's elements in the definition that actually require more definition. Someone alive or in utero at the creation of the interest who can effect vesting. There are A through F here. A, takers of contingent interest, for example, to B if she reaches the age 35, if B is 7 at creation. B, anyone who can affect the identity of the takers. Romanet 1, example, to the children of A who reach the age of 21. C, anyone who can affect a condition precedent. To B, if a female becomes president of the United States at the time of the grant, Michelle Bachmann is president-elect. D, the validating life and being may be implied in the grant. To B, if a female becomes president of the United States at the time of the grant, Michelle Bachmann is the president-elect. Okay, I read that. So FYI, my outline makes sense, even though I wrote it as like, I don't know, 3 years ago. Anyone who can affect a condition, no. Okay, D is the validating life and being may be implied in the grant. So, for example, to my grandchildren who reached the age of 21, at the time of his death, there were 2, A and B, alive. And second is the grant is good, even though A and B are not mentioned in the grant. They're implied. Interesting. The only persons, this is E, the only persons who can protect produce. Says product, but it meant to say produce. The only persons who can produce T's grandchildren are his children A and B. Since this is a will, it is effective only at T's death. So, interesting. Maybe points about that last grant. Applicability. The future interests that are contingent or vested subject to open. I wrote trusts and I wrote options. So that's what the rule against perpetuities applies to. Trusts and options are the easy part. The hard part is future interests that are contingent or vested subject to open. RAP will invalidate the interest that is excessively remote by rule of strict logical proof, for example, where vesting isn't guaranteed, but will not invalidate the entire grant, for example, vested remainders that are not subject to open. Presumptions. Lazy executor, fertile octogenarian, 2-week-old can have children, fetuses are alive, and unborn widows. Whoa. Say what? What else is wrong? Okay, so those are your presumptions that apply, that the rule against perpetuities assumes when it is being operative to destroy grants of again trust options. Those include in trust and options, and mainly future interests that are contingent or vested subject to open. Baddest to one, baddest to all, and class gifts if they must survive the testator to an age beyond 21. Gift condition on administrative contingency is stricken. Options that might be exercised not created later than the rules period are stricken. An executory interest following a defeasible fee, executory interest is stricken. So, stricken means that the part of the grant that is bad is X'd out. And that can be the whole grant if it's to like a class, such as to my grandchildren, blah, blah. All grandchildren. It's not like one out of many that can be saved. It can't. It's destroyed to them all. But that part of the grant, because it can be multiple iterations of gifts, that part of the grant that is bad is stricken, and only that part. So the parts that come before it, they're still good gifts. Even the parts that come after it, if it's possible, they're still gifts. Good gifts. What I don't understand is when they say executory interest following a defeasible fee dash executory interest is stricken. Again, RAP will invalidate the interest that is excessively remote. How is an executory interest following a defeasible fee too remote? What is a defeasible fee again? Hey Siri, what is a defeasible fee?
Okay, I found this on the web for what is a defeasible fee. Check it out.
The rights of ownership in real estate are dependent on the occurrence or non-occurrence of a certain event. Departures from common law rule is the wait and see statutes, where the validity of the interest is determined by actual future events. Step 1 is to analyze RAP by the Edwards method. If it is good, skip to step 2. If it fails, go to step 2. Step 2 is wait for the common law period and see if the interest vests. If it vests, then the gift is good. But if it does not vest, then the grant then the grant it fails and is struck. Uniform statutory rule against perpetuities is now giving a 90-year vesting period, and the purpose of the U.S. RAP is to eliminate future contingencies. Another wait-and-see approach uses the same two-step procedure, substitutes a flat 90-year period from creation of interest for common law lives and being plus 21. 3 score years plus 10 equals 20 score years plus 20 plus 20 plus 20 plus 10 equals 70 years plus 21 equals 90 years. That's how they arrived at 90. Anyway, if it does not vest within 90 years of creation, it's invalid. U.S. RAP is used in California. That's good to know. Oh my God. I'm going to use that in an essay. Oh my God. I'm going to be like, oh, who cares? In California, 90 years. Assumption that surviving spouse is a life in being, not alive in being, a life in being. Surviving spouse, that is. Assumption that child rearing can occur between 13 and 65 years old. So this is in the this is in the U.S. RAP rather than the common law, because remember the common law assumptions were that you can be a 2-week-old, 2-month-old, and give birth. Here it's saying you have to be 35 to 65 or 13 to 65. The Cypress approach invalid interest reform to match the grantor's intent. And the rule of convenience closes a class if the possession should be transferred. This is a rule of construction providing that upon the happening of an event that vests a future interest, that the class may be closed to the detriment of unanticipated lives. The Edwards method is the next page. It is a 7-step method of looking at a grant to see if it is stricken by the rule against perpetuities. First, step 1, separate each interest and identify the state of the title according to the conveyance. Step 2, look for any future interest in the grantee. Step 3, check each future interest to see if it is both vested and closed. If so, it is not vulnerable to RAP. Vested and closed, right? We said executory interest subject open. Or contingent is what RAP applies to. So if it's vested and closed, it's not vulnerable to RAP. Underline any future interest in the grantee that is either vested and open or contingent to be analyzed further in step 4. Step 4, identify the factual elements necessary for vesting and or closing. Step 5, identify the lives in being at the time the interest was created. Step 6, see if any of the lives in being that were identified can validate the gift, i.e., determine if the interest will vest during the perpetuity period. If so, then the grant can be validated. If no, proceed to step 7. Step 7 is step 6 fails, then the part of the gift granting the future interest that fails RAP must be struck and title reclassified, basically the rest of the grant, because it probably affects other people in the grant. And then step 8, restart for any other contingent or open future interest. So start again if they had another contingent interest or something subject to future interest, and just start at step 3. Excuse me. Case G versus Audley from 1787. Intent can be superseded by remoteness of grant. Facts. Uncle's grant to give interest in £1,000, not land subjectable to fee tail, authorized by statute de donis to his wife for her life, then to principal, to niece or her heirs or cousins, was overridden. seemed to be the impetus of rap discussing afterborn, those born 21 years after the instrument was drawn. If the language did not specifically state daughters now living or who would be living at the time of my death. Case the Symphony Space Inc. vs. Pergola Property Inc. 1996. Commercial purchase option in a New York lease created in 1978 was made subject to the common law rap and did not allow wait-and-see approach from ARC-New York's rap EPTL 9-1.1b. Common law rule upheld options to purchase land right subject to the rule against remote vesting. Such options are specifically enforceable and give the option holder a contingent equitable interest in the land, hindering alienability. That was the common law. What was the common law? That options to purchase land right subject, and an option to purchase land right subject to the rule against that right, including involving the option to purchase land, was subject to the rule against remote vesting. Such options are specifically enforceable and give the option holder a contingent equitable interest in the land, hindering alienability. That's really hard to understand the way that there's like no punctuation in this sentence. So options to purchase land are subject to the rule against remote vesting. Let's stop there. But those options are specifically enforceable and give the option holder a contingent equitable interest in land, hindering alienability. So when you say something specifically enforceable, that means that you can force the option and honor the contract, honor the option. And what that creates in the option holder is a contingent equitable interest in the land. And then FYI, that hinders alienability, but I don't care. I'm just trying to understand the sentence. But that's a truth outcome of the option holder's interest, which is a contingent equitable interest. Another way to say that is an executory interest. That's contingent upon the exercise of the option, I think. ARC principles. It is well stated beyond dispute that in determining whether a will has illegally suspended the power of alienability, the courts will look to what might have happened under the terms of the will rather than to what has specifically happened since the death of the testators. Then you have more about the perpetuity reform movement from Jesse Duke Minor and James E. Cryer, the rise of the perpetual trust. And we'll go on to chapter 6 material in the next recording.